Hello, caloric friends. How have you been? I'm glad to be speaking with you again. And what we're gonna do today is while I color this page from Johanna Basford's Small Victories using my Faber-Castell Polychromos, I'm gonna talk to you about a couple of lessons I've learned from 1 year of coloring. I started coloring in 2023 and I seriously took it up towards October. I had started around May, but really October feels like the month when I really took it seriously, when I also kind of took this YouTube channel seriously as well. So, kind of 1 year later now, I want to look back at what I've learned. And these lessons are not going to be about YouTube or having a YouTube channel, but just about coloring itself, and what I thought it would be and what it ended up being. So I hope you enjoy this. First, a little bit about the page I'm coloring. It's one with some very, very small flowers. I'm using a limited color palette. I'm trying to keep it in the pinks, as you see. So yeah, I hope you enjoy looking at this and maybe pick up a page in Johanna's Small Victories as well and color along with me. So back to the lessons. I've learned that I actually prefer certain styles of illustration, and these are not exactly the ones I thought I would. When I first picked up coloring, I really liked, or I thought I would like architecture, so buildings, because that's what I liked drawing before, and that's kind of how I ended up finding coloring through drawing. So yeah, I got some books initially that had buildings, exteriors, interiors. So it was very much focused on architecture or interior design, those types of coloring books. And while they're nice, I realized they're not the ones I find myself gravitating towards actually. I very much like Johanna Basford. I realized I like florals a lot in nature and actually landscape and scenes instead of buildings. I realized I love Maria Trolle and Rita Berman, and yeah, some other things than the ones I really thought I would. I also thought I would like mythographic, but actually, I have two books, Voyage and something with Earth, the Earth one. And I can't really get myself to color in them. It's just I can't make sense of those images really. And I just find myself either being intimidating or putting it off, but I realized maybe mythographic is not for me, while I really thought it would be. Also, someone I was very excited about in the beginning is French illustrator Zoe de Lacasse. She also does a lot of interiors and exteriors, so there's a lot of architecture in her drawings. And while I really like that, the reason why I don't color in her books as much as I thought I would is because her drawing style, her illustration style is so loose. It's like there are a lot of loose ends, if you will, in her pen drawings. And for coloring, which I feel is rather precise, it's just not a match for me. So what I noticed is she has a couple of books that are on watercolor paper, and with watercolor it works. Her style works because watercolor is also meant to be loose. So it's okay if that line does not meet another line and there's an open space there, and what do I do with that open space? Is it blue or is it green or is it yellow at that intersection? That's not a problem with watercolors. So I noticed that I'm using her books that are on watercolor paper, and those that are on more pencil paper, if you will. I don't like them that much. So I've actually decided I'm going to get rid of a few of those. Also, Steve McDonald is one of the artists whose books I first bought because his are about cities and architecture. And it's just not, yeah, not, it didn't turn out that I use them as much, because they're, it's like miniature versions. They're so intricate, and it's just not my style, I feel. So I haven't colored in them as much. On the other hand, I didn't think I like Hannah Carlson, and I resisted buying her books for a very long time. But actually, it turns out I do. And I also noticed through using different books that I gravitate towards those books that are hardback books, that are stitch bound and that have thicker paper. So Maria Trolley, yeah, Hannah Carlson are great. Even Johanna Basford, even if hers are not hardback, but the paper is really good, and the paper creates the experience for me. On the other hand, I also have one or two Amazon paper books that I really enjoy, but those are exclusively for markers. So I've sort of developed this preference for matching different types of paper or their quality with using a different medium. So alcohol markers on those with perhaps paper of lesser quality, and pencils on those with paper of higher quality. And I didn't know any of this when I just started. In fact, I had different assumptions from what it turned out to be. Another lesson I would like to share with you is that I gave into just buying very many different brands of pencils. Of course, once you enter the world of coloring, you discover there are 1,001 choices, and everything's exciting, and you want to try everything. So I also got quite a few different pencil sets, and I realized through use that again, I only gravitate towards two or three of them. So, all in all, I now think you only really need two or three sets of pencils and you're good. And what I would say is, I found it useful to have a set of soft core pencils, and for that, for lack of a better choice, is just Prismacolors. I'm not happy with that because they're super expensive in Europe where I live. But they're so buttery and milky, and the ones that got closest, I think, for me were the Faber-Castell Black Edition, which are so much more affordable here where I live. So, those could also be an alternative. But you need a set of soft core pencils, and then I would get a set of harder core pencils, and for that, my go to is Polychromos. I've tried different ones. I've tried the ones from Kohinoor. I've tried, um, yeah, some other ones, including the Albrecht Dürer. I know they're watercolor pencils, but also they have a hard core. Really, Polychromos is my go-to, and that's what I would choose if I were to choose only one pencil. Actually, that's what I would choose. You can only live with one set of pencils, and for me, that would be, I've discovered the Polychromos. Another lesson that I've learned is that block coloring is also okay. As I discovered more and more options, as I watched different videos and I discovered new techniques, I really felt the pressure to only make pretty colorings, if you will, or those where, there's depth and dimension, or at least the best I could make it look like. Um, and while that's really nice, I noticed that for me sometimes, like, that requires thinking. I'm not at the stage where this is just second nature to me. It requires thinking. I need to ask myself, ooh, where should that shade, where's the shade? Where should that go? Where's the shadow come from? And that, yeah, sometimes I just want to relax and not think about anything while I color. And that's what block coloring is for. So I've come to accept that that type of coloring is also okay. Not everything has to be beautiful. Not everything has to be, admired by an audience. I can also just color for myself. It doesn't matter if it's ugly or not. It's in the act of coloring, that it's basically a mindful moment. Um, and it calms me down, and it allows me to unwind maybe after a busy day, and that's also enough. just for the fun of it, and that's what matters. So if you've been struggling with that, it's been really important for me to sort of just let myself off the hook and give myself permission to do ugly if I need to do ugly, or not even ugly, but just simple. And that simple is also okay. Um, Another lesson I learned is that color alongs on my channel, specifically me just sitting a few hours at a desk, just coloring the same illustration, is just not for me. I realized that what I end up doing is short bursts of coloring. I also like to switch between books, so work on multiple images at the same time, kind of like how I do with reading real books. I have a few at the same time, and depending on my mood or kind of what I wanna learn about at the moment, I gravitate towards different ones. And it's the same with coloring for me. Um, so yeah, that's just how I end up coloring, and that's a good thing to know, because I also thought in the beginning that I would just do this long color alongs, that I would just follow what someone was doing. There are plenty of them. I love the ones that My Color for Country Life does. I love the ones that Shell's Coloring Journey does, but those are hours long, and I just can't get myself to sit in a chair for a few hours and do that. And I've concluded that I shouldn't force myself, because, again, coloring is a hobby. It's not work. It's not supposed to be, at least. And I shouldn't turn it into that. So if something doesn't work for me, then I'll do what works instead. Upon reflection, here's another lesson to share with you. I've discovered I have a favorite coloring place, which is not my desk, which is not a table, it's my couch. And ideally, either listening to an audiobook or a podcast or watching TV. And my favorite thing to do is to maybe watch a series and do some of that mindless block coloring on my couch. And I have this, yeah, cushion thing from IKEA, that's sort of a lap desk, which I use, or I just use a hardback coloring book, and that's also enough. And I just sit here super comfy with a cup of tea, with a nice light turned on, watching TV, and it's great. Like, I love doing that. So, it's good to discover what you like. And yeah, it's not what I thought it would be. Because, in videos, I mostly see people sitting at a desk, also coloring for hours at a desk. And I really wish that was me. And I'm really not. Or maybe not yet. Who knows? But I feel like that requires discipline. And by the time I end up coloring, I've used up all my willpower on my work day, for example. So I just want to relax and sit on the couch. Another lesson is that it's actually good to sample books and coloring supplies. So it's not really a waste. Even if I ended up not using some of the things I got, I couldn't have known unless I tried. That's how you find out what you like, sampling different things. So don't consider this to be a waste, because you've learned something from it. Maybe a lesson there is not to buy the biggest set you can find, but just start with a selection and then buy the bigger set once you actually know which pencils you really like. And yeah, just leave it at that. So, those were some reflections from my side. I'm curious to hear from you as well. What are some lessons that you've learned in the time you've been coloring? What is very different from how you thought it would be? I've had a few of those. It's nice to look back and reflect, so I want to encourage you to do the same. I would love to hear from you in comments, or maybe making your own video about this if you're on YouTube. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy coloring. Bye bye.